Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another playoff preview here at the Hockey Writers. We've done a few of these already that are published on this YouTube channel, but now we've got another one. This one is the Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues. Matchup that's been finalized for a bit here, but home ice came right down to the last couple of days of the regular season. So the Wild have home ice now, so we'll see how that all plays out, if that does play out. I've got a couple writers here. Mariah Stark covers the Minnesota Wild extensively. She's also on our podcast every Thursday, formerly of Chicks and Sticks as well. Thanks, Mariah, for coming on.
Thank you.
Also got Stephen Ground he covers the St. Louis Blues. He also covers them quite extensively as well. Thanks for coming on, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
All right. So this series should be interesting. There's quite a few stars on both sides. They were tied right up to the end of the regular season. So it's not like there's a huge discrepancy of points or anything like that. The Wild kind of pulled away a little bit right at the end of the season, but it's pretty tight. So the season series, though, was won by the Blues 3-0, although two of those wins were in OT so it's not like there's no 3-on-3 overtime in the playoffs. So there that may go out the window. The Blues outscored the Wild 16-12 over those games. Leading goal scorers and point getters are what you expect. Kaprizov had 6 points. Hartman had 5. On the Blues side, Buchnevich had a couple goals, 5 points, tied with Thomas, who had 5. And then Shen, Barbashev, and Kyrou all had 4 points. And Tarasenko was in there as well. So a lot of the stars came to play in those series. So in a lot of those games. I want to start out with a big matchup here. I mean, a lot of these guys have scored a lot of goals, a lot of points throughout this season. This is a quartet of players. So on the Wild side, you got Kirill Kaprizov, Kevin Fiala, Hartman, Zuccarello. And then on the Blues is Tarasenko, Kyrou, Buchnevich, and Thomas. All of them got like 70 plus points. I think Hartman was almost at 70. He was like 64. So these are all guys that have led the team all season long. So we'll start with you, Mariah. We'll start with Kaprizov. I mean, we know how good he's been all year. He's over 100 points, broke tons of records. How big of a factor is he going to be in this series?
Huge. I mean, he's done well all season. He had somewhat of a slow start. Everyone said, I even said it because it's like you're so used to this guy just lighting it up all the time. If he's not, I think there were like 20 or less games he didn't have points in, but it's like when he's not scoring, it's like, oh no, the world's ending, when it's really not. But honestly, I think he'll be huge in this. They're gonna really need him to step up and score goals because the Blues are an extremely difficult team for them to play. They were matched up pretty even, like you said, through the 3 games. I'll be honest. I'm nervous. I'm excited, but I'm nervous. I just really hope I think he'll step up and bring another level to his game because he always seems to find another step. Like I just heard it. I don't remember who I heard it from, but I think it was an interview with Hartman after their last game on being on a line with Kaprizov and what it's been like. And he said, he's surprising, but he's not. It's not surprising he's scoring points, but he finds a new way to do it all the time. So it's like, if he can keep doing that, I think they'll be successful.
Yeah, for sure. And you got Steven, you've got another Russian, Tarasenko on that side, and he led the team in scoring, 82 points, 34 goals, big bounce back from injury, dealing with injury and trade rumors too. And now he's back on top as being the star of the Blues. What do you think? How much of an impact will he have in this series? You got Thomas as well and Buchnevich are supporting him. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's had a remarkable bounce back season. I talked recently about how, he's probably got to be at least a finalist for the Masterton Trophy, if not the winner of it, after coming back from, I think it was 3 shoulder surgeries in the space of 20 months. And then the trade requests as well, and still putting all that behind him and delivering one of his best seasons. I think him and more broadly speaking, that line are kind of the centerpiece for the Blues in this series and really going forward, assuming that he, kind of rescinds his trade request and is happy to stay with the team. They've found something there that's really special. And towards the end of the season, I would put them up there with any league in hockey or any line in hockey as one of the best around. So if they can play their game and really gel like they did in the later stages of the season, they're going to be really hard to contain and probably, you know, a game changer for the Blues.
Yeah, well, the thing is though about both these teams is they're not top heavy. I mean, in points maybe a little bit, but when you look at their depth for both teams, and you know, Mariah, you've talked about them in a lot of your pieces and the depth, and you know, you got Matt Boldy, you got a few other guys that are, you know, what type of thing will that have in this series is their depth that the Wild have shown all season.
That's another thing that they're going to rely a lot on because, it's great to have Kaprizov scoring goals, but he's not the only player on the team.
Yeah.
And they've got Hartman, Zuccarello that work beautifully with him. They got lucky because I know at the beginning of the season they were a little nervous on what center was going to be there because Eriksson Ek, he's a great center. That's just not his role. He just doesn't fit there. And that was where they wanted him to be, so they were kind of up and down. So Hartman fitting in there has worked out well. But then, that second line of Fiala, Boldy, and Gaudreau has stepped up recently. He's been a huge surprise. Everyone, I was skeptical when they got him. And Evason's like, no, listen up. This guy is legit. And he's proven himself. And then, the third line, the Grief line, Greenway, Eriksson and Foligno. Thankfully, Foligno was practicing today. I don't know. They haven't really clarified yet if he's going to play tomorrow. But at least they got Greenway back, and he's a big physical presence. And then, of course, the fourth line that I had an article about, too, with Delorier, Duhaime, and Jost. That one has been flipping so all the time that they have Dewar. They've got so many players they can flip in and out of the roster that it's a really good thing for them if they end up, God forbid, have injuries and stuff. They've got players they can bring up. Even Rossi's been mentioned as he'll be brought up if someone's injured. So it's huge.
Lots of good depth there. I mean, physicality that Delorier has brought, since he came there has been really key. I think it's going to be huge in the playoffs for him too. Steven, on your side, the Blues side, their depth has also been a factor throughout the season. You're looking at some of these points, like Braden Shen has 58 points, O'Reilly, Perron, Saad, you go down the list. I mean, how much is their depth going to come into play in this series?
Yeah, I think it'll be huge. They finished the season with 9 different 20 goal scorers. All of their top 9 forwards hit the 20 goal mark, with a couple of Thomas and O'Reilly crossing the finish line pretty late in the season there. So that's incredible. That's a huge change for a Blues team that's traditionally been built on defense. That's definitely not who they are this year. They are a goals first team. They were third in the NHL in goals for, I think, this season. So they've got a lot of guys. Ivan Barbashev is a name that comes to mind, who probably isn't really a household name around the NHL, but he scored like 25, 26 goals this season. And, has just been an extraordinary player in the middle six who can, play up and down your lineup, play pretty much any role you need. And then, like you mentioned, Braden Shen, seems almost like an afterthought on the Blues, which is crazy to think of. He's a former 6th overall pick, I think. And he's just been a kind of a journeyman, or not a journeyman really, but, he's just played his role really well for the Blues since he got here from Philadelphia. And even though it's transformed and he's gone from basically the top center to, arguably the third center now, he's really, played his role and taken that all in stride and really been a contributor as well. I think their depth is going to be a huge factor here.
Yeah, I think, both sides have so much that they couldn't throw at each other. So it's no wonder they're pretty even throughout the season. Let's talk about the defense now. These are the defense that's going to have to stop this depth and this depth scoring, all this scoring. So both sides, they don't have big headline defensemen. Petrangelo's not with the Blues anymore. You've got, on both sides, you've got just a really solid group of defensemen. Mariah, how do you think they're going to match up against this Blues team with all their depth and their scoring?
I hope well. Our defense, I've been more of a skeptic of our defense. I love our entire team, but the defense, the goalies got a lot of the blame. Like Talbot took a lot of blame a few months ago, but it wasn't all him that was letting in the goals. The defense on the penalty kill was forgetting about the weak side person a lot. And I mean, looking at the matchups they had this morning, they had Middleton with Spurgeon, Brodin and Dumba, Maryland Kulikov. I mean, I think it's solid. I just kind of want to wait and see what happens. I believe in them fully. They just got to make sure they're paying attention to where the weak side players are, because St. Louis will exploit that.
Yeah, for sure. Steven, their defense is, like I said, Pietrangelo's not leading them back there anymore, but you've got some great guys like Colton Parayko. They added Nick Leddy at the deadline. What do you think this group will be able to do against Kaprizov, who's arguably probably the most talented player in this series, what he's done all year? How are they going to stop this guy?
Yeah, I mean, they may not. That's part of the answer, is they may just have to outscore the Wild in some games. I think the Blues defense is kind of an enigma right now, because there are some guys there that are good names and great players. Colton Parayko, chief among them, who just really hasn't taken that step into being a true number one defenseman, like I think the team hoped he would when they allowed Alex Pietrangelo to leave and kind of anointed him as their new number one. He's been sort of inconsistent. He's never really developed the offensive side that a modern true number one would hope to have. So he's okay, pretty good defensively, depending on if he's paired with Marco Scandella or not. That can be a liability for sure, but he's not quite the shutdown player he was certainly in the Cup run with Jay Bouwmeester at his side. Justin Falk has been tremendous offensively, but isn't necessarily a shutdown guy either. Same with Torrey Krug. And you mentioned Leddy, a guy who I really thought was kind of a door prize almost at the trade deadline, just not much of an addition at all, has I think been pretty good in his role for the price they paid for him. Pleasantly surprised with his output. So it's a very different Blues team from teams that folks might be familiar with in the past, because really it is just not defense first at all, and they are going to have to score to keep up with the Wild, because the Wild certainly will score some, but the defense may be able to do just enough in the critical moments to keep them in it and give them the opportunity to win.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how they'll be able to handle a lot of this offense, both sides. So let's look at the last line of defense, the goaltending. Marc-Andre Fleury was brought in from the Chicago Blackhawks for the Wild. Cam Talbot was there all year. Kaapo Kähkönen was traded to the San Jose Sharks. So, I just read an article from you, Mariah, about this goaltending matchup. Who's going to start in the playoffs? So, I mean, what do you think that this goaltending will be? I mean, who's going to be the guy?
Well, reading on Twitter, they're Evason said they know exactly who they want, but they're not saying anything, and I kind of figured they wouldn't. I'm gonna say Fleury, because I mean that is what they got him for. He's been through this. He's been in the playoffs the last 15 years straight, and I mean he's won 3 Stanley Cups. He knows what it's like. This team, the Wild, have been to the playoffs but haven't been past the first round in a long time.
Yeah.
And they need, and nothing against goaltenders of past or teams of past, but this is the first time they've really had a guy that is this caliber veteran who can lead the way and has been there before. And especially in goaltending, that's huge. Nothing against Talbot. He's a fabulous goaltender. And I even put in my article, they could be leading towards Fleury, and guess what? Talbot starts to throw everybody off. So, I mean, either goalie, they're going to be in good hands, but I'm going to guess they're going to go with Fleury just because of his experience. And, I mean, that's what they went after him for.
Yeah.
So, but Talbot, if he goes, he'll be just fine, because he's been great the last few weeks too. So.
Well, it's a good problem to have. Having 2 goaltenders you can throw in at any point. The other side, Steven, is a similar situation. You got Ville Husso, who's much younger. And then you got Binnington, who's won a cup, who is a big part of the Blues, big contract. Who do you think they're going to lean on in this series? I mean, it's probably going to be Husso because of his performance, but still Binnington there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be Husso for sure out of the gate. He seems to have earned the trust of the team and of head coach Craig Berube. I think that's the right choice. I'm a little on the fence because Husso had an extraordinary start and kind of faded down the stretch. Binnington had a decent start, really, really rocky middle, and then was pretty strong down the stretch. So I think this is a situation where they both stabilized, but the stable isn't necessarily extremely good. It's okay. It's okay to good, but it's just not. You're not looking at some red hot goaltender entering the playoffs. So the negative of that is it's not a very clear, this is our guy, we have to start this guy, and we're 100% confident in him. I guess the positive is if Husso struggles, you don't have any real qualms about pulling the trigger and switching to Binnington, who has been there and done it before. So I would probably give the Wild the upper hand, but I do think there are some similarities in that, with Fleury being the big name, probably has the edge, but they are kind of 4 goaltenders who are all sort of just above average right now, and probably no clear, elite options there.
Was Husso in all 3 games against the Wild?
I'd have to go double check, but I think that's probable. Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, I don't remember seeing Binnington at all for at least when we played. But
yeah, it's certainly. I mean, Husso definitely got the lion's share of the important games, especially in the second half of the season. So that would check out. I'll give a look and let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting matchup regardless. I mean, both teams have options to go to if they, this is a similar situation where Fleury and Matt Murray for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they went back and forth between the two throughout their series, throughout the playoffs at one point. So we'll see. Hopefully they don't have to do that because that means one guy's not doing well. So, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how that all goes. Let's go and have some X factors in this series. These are the guys that I always say, the Fernando Pisani type players. Say to Pitt, if you don't know who that is, look him up because he scored like 14 goals or something for the Oilers a long time ago. And I think their last cup run, and he didn't do anything in the regular season, just came out of nowhere. So is there anyone, Mariah, on the Wild that could potentially just, no one's talking about them, but they become a huge factor in this series?
I'm going to go out of the box on this one completely because I would absolutely love it if it happens. Nicholas Delorier and Jake Middleton. Those guys, they don't score a lot of goals. Middleton's a very solid defenseman. He's actually a lot offensively too. He'll surprise you. He'll break into the zone and just go for it. And I'm like, you know what? Go. And Delorier scored, I think, his first game he was with us. And I mean, those guys just, no one expects it. They're physical. They're, the guys that are just kind of there doing what they need to do, and they can sneak some by you. So honestly, yep. I would love to see it happen.
I love that. That's what I love about the playoffs is these guys that just, perform and you don't expect them to. And it's such a short period. Anyone can get hot. They can get hot for 2 weeks. I mean, that's all you really need, a few weeks. Steven, is there anyone on the Blues that can do this? I mean, in the past on their cup runs, they've got guys that just scored the key goal or just come out of nowhere and done it. So what do you think?
Yeah, just to answer Mariah's question real quick, Jordan Binnington did start in a game that I almost forgot happened this year, the Winter Classic.
Oh my God.
Oh, yes.
I forgot all about that.
Seems like ages ago. But speaking of the Winter Classic, I do think the X factor for the Blues is undeniably Jordan Kyrou, who had a standout, arguably breakout game at the Winter Classic. He has struggled a bit since then, and he had an explosive start to the season and looked like kind of a breakout superstar, and you started to think this kid can't be stopped, and then he kind of stopped out of nowhere. And I think some of that has to do with the rise of the line we already talked about. Thomas Tarasenko and Buchnevich just did so much of the scoring that it became a less of a burden on him, but he certainly struggled. If he can be that player that we saw in the first half of the season, we saw at Target Field, that's going to be a really hard question for the Wild to answer, because, you know, they're going to obviously commit their best defensive forwards and defenders to the Thomas and Tarasenko line, and having Kyrie out there on another line doing his thing would be very hard to stop. So I think he's got to really rise to the occasion and be that player he can be for the Blues to have success.
Yeah, well, he's such a speed threat too, so that's huge to break open defenses. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can do that. Let's. I'm going to ask each of you this question. So Mariah, we'll start with you. The Minnesota Wild will win this series if.
Oh boy. If their goaltending goes 100%, that's goaltending. I think for us has been nothing against Fleury because he just got here, but that was kind of their whole question mark throughout the season. But now that they have Fleury, hopefully it can switch, and I think goaltending is going to be key for them.
Yeah, for sure. Steven, same question, but for the Blues side, St. Louis Blues will win this series
if they can draw a lot of penalties. I think they're a team whose power play has been very good all season. One of the best in the league. I think they finished second or third overall. Second looks like to the Maple Leafs. And we all know that penalty calling kind of stops in the playoffs. And that's going to be hard for the Blues to deal with. So if they can find a way to use the David Perrons of the world, get under people's skin, draw those penalties, and then take advantage, I think that's how they're going to find an edge in this series.
All right. So we'll see if all that comes to fruition. Now's final predictions. Mariah, what do you think the series is going to end at? And give us the series winning goal. Who's going to score it?
I'm going to say Wild in 7, and I'm going with my man, Kirill. I got to go with him.
Good pick. I mean, that's pretty good. I think he's done so much scoring this year. It's the best pick for sure. Steven, same. What do you think the series is going to end at? And give us a series winning goal.
I'm really excited for this series, not just as a homer. I think it's one of the best first round matchups. I will counter Mariah and say Blues in 7. And exactly. I will say Jordan Kyrou. I'll stick with that narrative. I think he's going to have a big series and be the difference maker in this one. There
you go. So we'll come back to this, see who's right, who was close, and it's out on the internet forever. So
that's right.
Thanks, Mariah and Steven, for coming on the show and setting up this series for our viewers. And we'll see. This is going to be an interesting series to watch. Like most of the series that are in this playoff, it's probably the most excited I've been to watch all these series. I don't think there's a boring one out there. So that's great for hockey, and it's going to be great to watch. Make sure you're following Mariah and Steven on the Hockey Writers. They're going to be extensively covering this series wall to wall. So make sure you're up for that. And of course, the other Wild writers and Blues writers as well. They're going to be all over this series. So follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this video. We're going to have a couple more previews coming your way. We'll see you next time.